Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the Internet channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. In this video, we will be talking about the second mechanic for Dragon Empire that is centered around the Narukami clan. As a general thumb of this mechanic is that they focus mostly on mass chain retiring, meaning that once a rearguard got retired, it set off a chain reaction where one by one your opponent's rearguard is gonna get retired like continuously. The power scaling of this mechanic will be based on how many open rearguards your opponent has. The more empty rearguard circle your opponent has, the more powerful the skills will be. And also, this is the first time I actually see a Dragon Empire has superior calling skill. I mean, of course, there are other clans like Nubatama, Murakumo, and Tachikaze that focuses around superior calling. But then I never actually see Narukami actually has this clan. Most of their superior calling is just one-on-one trade. First off, we have Double Gun of Duststorm Bart. This is a generic starter, much like the egg that we have in the TD. So nothing really much to say about this other than, well, it's a starter. Next, of course, we have Gunning of Duststorm Nigel. He has 2 skill. Auto, when this unit is rode upon by Cataclysmic Bullet of Duststorm Randor, so charge 1. And then the second skill is Auto Rearguard Circle. When your opponent's rearguard is retired during your main phase, counterblast 1 and retire this unit. Choose one of your opponent's rearguard and retire it. So basically this one is like all right lines that was being introduced so far. This will definitely be in the right deck material. You will tend to see a lot of soul charging skills for this mechanic because the main boss unit actually relies on you having a lot of soul to actually do something. But we will get into that later. And of course, this one will set off a chain reaction for retire. Once something is being retired, you can actually chain this unit skill by retiring itself to retire another one. So really good field control, even in the early game. Next is the Grade 2 Cataclysmic Bullet of Duststorm Randor. He has 2 skill, Auto. When this unit is rode upon by Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, which is the Grade 3 boss unit, draw a card, choose up to one of your cards from your drop zone and put it into your soul. Second skill is Auto, Vanguard Rearguard. When this unit attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less rearguard, cost counterblast 1, soul charge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of that battle. Of course, this will definitely be a right deck material, and this will actually gives you 1 soul and 1 hand, one from drawing and the other is actually soul charging from the drop zone, which is actually very nice, since if you do discard 1 to write this, that card is basically going into the soul, which is actually very nice and very effective use of your resources. This card actually has great synergy with Virina if you do play it in this deck. But then of course, you don't really want to put Virina here, but I just putting in there just to let you know it's an option. But then of course, Virina needs 2 soul to actually retire something, which is not really the best, but then it is an option. Once we get to the Grade 3 boss unit, you will understand why I say Virina might not be the best option, but it is still an option. Now for the Grade 3 boss unit, we have a Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene. He has 2 skill, Active Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, cost, rest 2 rearguards. Choose one of your opponent's rearguard, retire it, and this unit gets 10k until the end of turn. Second skill, once per turn. If your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, Soul Blast 5, look at the same number of cards from the top of your deck as the number of your opponent's open rearguard circle. Choose any number of units, cards from among them, call them to rearguard circle, and put them into your soul. Now you understand why I say Virina is not really good, because this unit skill requires you to have Soul Blast 5. So, no, yeah. I mean, this kind of feels like Bruce a little bit, right? So, of course, this unit is the chain retire initiator. By resting 2 rearguards, you start to retire something, and this will set off a chain reaction to the other rearguard. Like the Grade 1 Nigel, you were able to retire another one, which is technically very nice, since you would definitely have your opponent's rearguard as 2 or less, or even nuke the whole Bart. And also, this unit does lets you superior calling from the top of your deck by Soul Blasting 5. Of course, the more open rearguard circle that your opponent has, you will able to superior call a lot more, and then the rest will goes to Soul anyways. So this also acts as a cost refund for Soul Blasting 5. In a way, you don't really need to Soul Blast as much because you don't really have to commit to use this unit skill every single turn. If you do that, then you will face a very big issue of decking out if you do keep spamming the second skill. Now, as for the synergy with the rest of the support that we have for Dragon Empire, the first one, of course, we have the Virina twins, Virina himself, and of course Arcus. Why I put this two as a synergy is because if you do run Trickstar in this deck, and when you want to use Eugene's skill, you can actually rest the Trickstar and then I overdress either Virina or Arcus on top of it, and then it will be as stand, which is kind of negating the cost for Eugene, while also have a very powerful rearguard, which is actually a very nice skill. This is just to negate the cost because, I mean, you need to rest 2 rearguards in order to use his skill, but then of course with this you don't really need to, that cost is literally nothing if you play overdress mechanic in this deck. Next skill is the Shirayuki knockoff Manago, Shiga Manago. This unit does trigger when the moment when your opponent rearguard is being retired. You are able to look at the top of your deck and you can choose to either soul charge it or either call it, which basically retire herself to get something or get 1 soul is actually not too bad, since this unit can be a prime resting target for Eugene's skill, since you will need 2 rearguards to rest. I mean, you can rest this unit, and when you do retire something, you can actually trigger this unit skill to either check the top deck to soul charge or call it. And of course, we have Sunlight Punishment as a very good supporting card. Since this deck does not really use that much counterblast, you're able to tag in like 1 or 2 discard to basically retire the board even more if you think that your opponent has too many key pieces on the field, and this card may or may not severely cripple your opponent that to the point where he does not have a really threatening next turn. It is attack option, and I would be really interested and impressed if someone was able to pull this off and actually win. Next, of course, is the PR, this Spear Dragon here. Since this unit does need your opponent to have a empty rearguard column, this unit does synergize well with Eugene, since the whole core mechanic is require you to basically retire everything. So this unit can be a power attacker for Eugene if you do think that this deck is lacking in power, which I actually think this deck does lack in power. But at the end of the day, you're focusing more on the control aspect of this nation. Next is the newly revealed Triceratops Tri-Bash. So the way how this unit works is that you can actually call this unit out in the back row, so that you're able to call something out in the front row to attack, and then rest by using Eugene's skill to retire something. Or you can use this as an attacker, which the way this unit skill actually works when your Vanguard is attacking, you can actually retire this unit to give your Vanguard a critical until the end of that battle, which is quite nice, because since your Vanguard will be hitting for 2 critical and it might threaten your opponent to actually throw something else. So this unit can be a rest target or can be a first attacking unit. So it's very interesting to see how this deck actually performs in the whole meta of BT01. Next is the strength of this mechanic. Of course, this whole mechanic focus around the board nuke, which means every single turn you are able to retire something, which will definitely cripple your opponent, because we do not really have a lot of superior calling clans out there. Even Cater Sanctuary is top deck, which do not really happen that often, except for basically the right line. That's it. They don't really superior call stuff. Same goes to Stoichia. Of course, this deck is the only superior calling clan and superior calling nation at the moment for the whole of Overdress meta. But then, of course, you do need Soul Blast 5. That's another thing to worry about. However, even if it does Soul Blast 5, this unit does refund you the cost based on how many units you call. So based on how many open rearguards your opponent has, you're able to check that set amount number. Let's say if your opponent has an empty rearguard board, you're able to check top 5 and you basically choose from there which unit you want to call. If you call 3, the other 2 card will go to the soul, which will actually saves you a lot of hand resources because you're technically calling from the deck, and also replenish your soul to use for future purposes. So even if your opponent does retire you, I mean like board wipe you, you're still able to recover from that, which is a really good option, a really good advantage for this mechanic. As for the weakness for this mechanic is that, of course, this faces the same issue as Bruce and also Barrow Magnus right now, because it does randomly soul charges stuff, which will lead to you decking out. So I mean, you get what I mean here, because there's literally nothing that you can actually recycle your units from the drop zone to the deck. So you do really need to control the amount of cards that you soul charge in one turn. Or of course, if you do really need, use the skill. Just keep in mind is that only use the skill when you really need to. Don't like recklessly use the skill, and of course it's not gonna do a lot. So yeah, of course I do put a counter blast issue here, is because even though they do not really use a lot of counter blast, they actually, if you want to like kind of board wipe the whole thing, you will need to have a lot of resources in order to board wipe everything, because for one counter blast you basically retire only 1 or 2 if you're saying Eugene is free of cost. So in order for you to like kind of retire everything, you're not going to be able to keep up the retiring if your opponent keeps calling things out. And of course, if your opponent do not somehow survive your turn, and you somehow survive that turn, you're not able to like follow up on the resources in order to retire their rear guard. The cost refund might backfire on you, is because if you do check into 5 triggers, yeah. Because the problem here is that if you don't call, it's not going to go back to the deck. It's gonna go into the soul. So yeah, it might backfire, but then what are the chances of that happening? Fingers crossed. And of course, the only other weakness this mechanic has is that it's only attacking for 3 times, which is at the moment not really the best. And that is all for this video. What do you think of the Narukami version of Overdress? Do you think it's kind of underwhelming since both of Eugene's skill activates in the main phase? Do you think Overdress is much more powerful than this? Or do you think the board wipe actually matters in the meta game? Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and remember to ring the bell icon just so that you don't miss any of my videos. With that said, I'll see you all on the field.